Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and in this episode, we're going to put on the explorer's hat and do a little archaeology deep dive into another forgotten long box in my collection. So let's go to the boxes. Okay, here we are. We see the magic curtain, and just as we did last time, we're going to sweep aside the magic curtain to reveal, first of all, a pile of garbage. But then a bunch of boxes of comics, and if we go down, you'll see most of them are clearly marked, and then we get down to that one. And if you're like me, you look at this box and you think to yourself, what the heck's in that? Good question. That's what we're going to find out right now. All right, I've still got the hat on, so I look like I'm a member of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band about to play a saxophone. That's not what's happening, I promise. Instead, we've got this box of comics here, and I can actually tell just at a quick glance what's basically in here because we have some dividers, and a couple of them actually have things written on them. This one says horror, and this one says miscellaneous war. So I appear to have stumbled into one of my genre boxes where I just put the things that I don't specifically collect in terms of titles, but I've picked up one reason or another over the years. Now, horror is a genre that I don't generally collect, but I do when I get some cool horror books. Like I just got some really cool ones in a trade with Kyle. Thanks, Kyle. I keep the cool ones. But in terms of horror, it's probably my least favorite genre. I collect a lot of war comics. There's a lot of series that I've started and then decided not to collect. But for one reason or another, I've kept bits and pieces. So I have a general idea, I guess, of sort of what's in here. But the specifics, I don't know. But let's take a look together. Let's see what we got in here. And we're starting off the bat with one of my favorite covers. It's Astronaut Lincoln, Unexpected 217. I have read this, and it's just as weird as the cover suggests. But this is one that I just really love the Unexpected name and logo. And I used to I had a large collection of Unexpected that I bought just because I liked the logo. And eventually I decided that was silly and I got rid of them. But I did keep a few issues, and this one is one that I had to keep a hold of because of this cool Space Lincoln cover. So next up, sorry, some of these bags have giant stickers on them. I've never actually bought anything from Mile High. I got these in a trade with someone. This is Strange Suspense Stories number 5, Steve Ditko cover. Ditko is doing a lot of work for Charlton at this time. It's 1969. Same with this one, although this is actually a Jim Aparo cover. Strange Suspense Stories number 8. Again, I got this in a trade with someone. More Charlton. This is really cool. It's Midnight Tales number 1. The guy who did this, his name was Wayne Howard. He did this series. His covers have a very sort of almost like Wally Wood style EC sort of look to them, which I really appreciate. Well, here's a cool book. It's House of Mystery 204, which, as you can see here, is signed by Bernie Wrightson, the late great Bernie Wrightson. I met at a couple shows and forgot actually that I had him sign that. I've got a couple other things he signed that I remembered, but I'd forgotten about this one. He's so good, Another cover that I kept because I liked it. I think this is Kaluta. From the looks of it, House of Mystery 210. The covers from this period are so great. The early horror books, DC, the 15, Big 25, and then the 20-cent era. The covers, oh my goodness, they're so good. Here's another one. This is Wrightson by the looks. Looks like Wrightson art. It's a vampire cover, 211. House of Mystery 211. These are so cool. The covers are just so cool. Here's a Neil Adams cover. This is a dollar book. House of Mystery was one that they went into this dollar format for a while. Neil Adams cover. Another dollar book. This is a Joe Orlando cover. I think I just kept this one because it's a cool dollar, 100 page or whatever. This was an 80 page, I guess. Another Kaluta cover, House of Mystery 261. A lot of these I haven't read. Again, I understand it's blasphemy. I love reading comics, and I read comics all the time, but I have so many of them, and I just buy them faster than I can actually read them. But I really appreciate these. Since horror doesn't sit well with me mentally, I just really don't do well with horror. But I love the cover art so much. That's why I have pretty much all of these. House of Secrets. This one's really cool because it's a gothic romance cover. Now, I don't know the story behind this one because this is actually a little bit before they did Sinister House of Secret Love and Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love. But it's done in the exact same cover style as though it's like a romance novel. That's why I have this one, because it's so cool. It's House of Secrets 89. The series had just restarted. 81 was the first. I think that's right. Anyway, around that time, it had just sort of rebooted after being dormant for several years and relaunched as a straight horror. Here's a really cool, I think this might be Sparling. It's House of Secrets 97. A number of years ago now, 10 years ago probably, I got a lead from someone I knew about a guy had a big collection of stuff he was getting rid of. And he was a comic collector like me. He was flipping stuff he didn't want anymore. And I went there and I bought 3 long boxes for $90, I think. And it was fine. It was random stuff. There's a lot of indie books, stuff I didn't really care about from the 80s, and a lot of cool stuff that I liked mixed in. But then, just as I was getting ready to leave, he said he had this other box, and it was a box of Bronze Age stuff, early Bronze Age stuff. And so I ended up buying that for an extra like $30. He threw in this big box of all this awesome Bronze Age stuff, and that was the cool stuff. This was in there. This is one of the issues in there, I think. And so I only paid like 50 cents for it, but it's in really nice shape, great cover. House of Secrets 105. Again, it's a Wrightson cover, and again, I have it autographed by Bernie Wrightson. I just really love this era of cover, the design. I love the big logo with the semi-frame, the double bullet, which is what I call this, where they have the DC and the 20 cents. And then the great Bernie Wrightson artwork. There's like a group of weirdos that are, I don't know, they're either eating or murdering or just massaging, tickling maybe this guy. I don't know, but great cover by the late great Bernie Wrightson. Again, I have that one autographed. Here's a really cool one, 125. It's the giant house cat cover. I just love this one again. Big logo, House of Secrets, big semi-frame, awesome cover with the house cat. I've always loved that one. Chamber of Darkness 4. This is really low-grade Marvel, but again, it's got a great cover. In this case, I think this is the Severins. I think it's John Severin with Maurice Severin inking. Or actually, I think it's the other way around. It's Maurice Severin pencils with John Severin inks. It's just so cool. Hopefully I'm not going through these too fast, but it's Tales of Evil #1. In terms of Atlas books from the mid 70s, this is a series that I see much less often than some of the other ones. Unexpected. These are some remnants of my big Unexpected collection. I think I just have them. I don't know why, to be honest. They're just issues of Unexpected that I had kept around for the logos, I guess. The covers are cool, but these are late 70s, so they're not nearly as cool as the early 70s stuff. Oh, here's a really awesome book. Okay, I'm excited. It's Madame Xanadu, #1. One of DC's first attempts at a direct market only book. I think this might have been the first one that they did. It was only direct market. Madame Xanadu, great cover by Kaluta. This was supposed to be the first issue in a series, but then writer Steve Englehart, they had some falling out with DC, and he ended up quitting, and he took his stories and redid them as Scorpio Rose at Eclipse or something like that. I'm a big fan of Madame Xanadu. Ghosts. Don't have any idea why I have this or where I got it. Looks like I have a few issues of Ghosts. But this one I know why, because it's got Spectre in it. There's a couple issues of Ghosts right at the end that have Spectre. So this is number 97. Dr. 13, the Ghost Breaker, has like a series is a recurring feature in Ghosts, and he has this thing where he is facing off against the Spectre. House of Mystery, but at the end when they have the I Vampire series, which is something. This one is a Kaluta cover. There's all these cool covers by all these great artists on the I Vampire series. Joe Kubert does a lot of the covers for that run, so that's cool. These are in very much no particular order, because here's another Midnight Tales with a Wayne Howard cover. Again, it's kind of an EC, like Wally Wood inspired artwork. Here's a cool mini run that most people probably aren't familiar with unless you've happened to run across it in a box. It's Madhouse, the 3-issue horror run on Madhouse. So Madhouse was an Archie series, and it was called Archie's Madhouse, and it was like gag strips featuring Archie originally, and then it was just random gag strips, and eventually they had this band in it called the Madhouse Glads, which was like their version of Josie and the Pussycats. And then, like 74 or so, they did this Red Circle horror line. See, it says Red Circle comic strip across the top. And they turned Madhouse into a straight horror with covers and interiors all by the awesome artist Gray Morrow. He would write and draw the whole book. And there are 3 issues of Madhouse. It's 95, 96, and 97 are the 3 that he did. Just those 3. And then it reverted back to just an Archie gag strip. So Madhouse has got to be a really weird series to collect, because you're like, Archie, Archie, Archie. Oh my God, it's Gray Morrow vampire stuff. Also, well, let me show you this again here. The vampire, to me, first of all, he's wearing a Batman logo. I don't know if you can see that as a pendant. But also, he certainly doesn't look like you think of a traditional vampire, with that. And so part of me always has thought that it looks kind of like Roy Thomas from the time period. I don't know. It's probably not. It's probably not intended to be Roy Thomas. This hat just looks kind of silly. Especially when you're seeing the underside. I look kind of like Tom Brevoort with like his So anyway, here's issue 96 of Madhouse. Check out this awesome Gray Morrow cover. That woman is topless. She's definitely topless, but she's just summoned this big demon. It says Demon Kiss. Yeah, I don't have the last one. The 97 has got another awesome cover by Gray Morrow. Now he was doing another series, which I'll get to in a second, but check this out. It's Chilling Adventures in Sorcery as Told by Sabrina. There's 2 issues of this. This is issue 1. I thought I had issue 2, maybe not. We'll see, I guess. Anyway, this is the first issue, and these are straight horror stories, but they're drawn in the classic Archie style, and it's the reading these is just like crazy because there's one that's like an exorcism story, and there's a girl who's drawn like Veronica and like her head spinning and like the whole 9 yards. It's so weird. That would lasted 2 issues, and then with issue 3, they changed the title to Chilling Adventures in Sorcery, and again Gray Morrow took over doing the whole book. And so the first 2 issues are Chilling Adventures as told by Sabrina, and then with issue 3 it becomes Chilling Adventures of Sorcery, and I've got a few of these. So weird. The Gray Morrow is so good. That eventually the title changed again to Red Circle Sorcery. That was issue 7. Here's issue 8. I pick these up cheap when I can. They're not that easy to find cheap, but they're so cool. They're just so neat. Here's issue 9. At this point, they changed the title just to Sorcery. So this went through a lot of title changes in a very short period of time. And then what's this? Oh, these are in here upside down. Oh, this is a new comic. So I'll go through this one a little bit faster because I don't think most people care about this. Archie, of course, has been doing a bunch of horror stuff over the last few years, and this is Jughead the Hunger, which is Jughead as a werewolf. This series just came to an end recently, issue 2. I'm a big Jughead fan. I've got a complete run of Jughead from issue 84 to present. So that's like the last 500 issues almost. But the regular Jughead series ended and was replaced with this horror series, Jughead the Hunger. It's very over-the-top violent gore, played sort of straight, but, you know, anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm just not a big fan, but... here's issue 11 with Frankenmoose. That, like I said, that ended, and then they did a 5-issue crossover, which was Vampironica versus Jughead the Hunger. This was all spurred by the success of Afterlife with Archie. Here's issue 1. This is one of the variant covers. Issue 2 variant. I do have the Andrew Peepoy variant somewhere for issue 1. Issue 3. This is a series that, again, is very violent and over the top, but it's really good. It's the Archie characters in a zombie apocalypse. Here's one of the Peepoy variants, which is just basically the Archie girls in skimpy outfits. Here's the Sabrina variant in issue 6. This issue is great. This issue is a Sabrina Spotlight issue. It's so good. And what happened with this series, here's another Cheesecake Peepoy variant. This one I have signed by Andrew Peepoy. I do have issue 1 here signed by him somewhere with the issue 1 variant. I don't know where it is. Issue 8. And the guy, here's the issue 1 Halloween free variant. Anyway, the guy that was writing the series is the guy that is the showrunner for Riverdale and all of their TV shows. And so basically he got so busy with the TV shows that he just stopped doing the comic. And so it just stopped in the middle of the storyline. There was like one issue came out like a year and a half after the other ones. And then we've never seen it again. The same thing happened with the sister series, which is... The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Here's one of the variant covers for Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. The hit TV show, of course, that's another variant. Hit TV show on Netflix, which draws very heavily from this comic, as it should, because it's written by the same person. I have these movie poster variants. That one's the movie Haxan. Carrie, for issue 4. Let's see. Oh, here's Afterlife with Archie 10, with a story about Josie and the Pussycats. Turns out they're vampires, so Here's issue 9. These are a little out of order. Oh, here's the issue 1. Yeah, so this is it's pretty well known Andrew Peepoy variant. Have it signed by Peepoy with Betty in the negligee, the nightgown or whatever that is supposed to be, being attacked by the gang. This was sort of this series is kind of a surprise hit, and this variant took off. It was worth a fair amount of money at one point, but I'm guessing that's probably interest has probably died off because it's been so long since the last issue. Yeah, and the same with Chilling Adventures. Issue 8 was the last issue that came out, and it's been years. They just stopped. They're focusing on the TV show. That makes sense. I don't blame them. But it's also a little annoying for the comic reader to get partway through the storyline and then it just ends. So that's my horror collection. And then up here, it's funny. It says Miscellaneous War, but there's actually 3 different sections, and they're all war comics. So I have no idea what I was thinking with the sorting here. But we'll find out together when we dive into the war comics, starting right now. All right. So this is just not a good look for me. So let's see what this first section is. Starts off here with a 72-page, it's a 30th anniversary issue of GI Combat with a Honda tank. This is number 246. I used to actually have a bunch of GI Combat. There's a point where I was collecting like all the DC war books at once. I had long runs of GI Combat and a huge collection of Sergeant Rock, like almost 200 issues. And I realized it was taking up a lot of space. I wasn't really reading them, and I decided I needed to just hone, what I was doing, focus my collection. That happens from time to time. I get all enthusiastic about a title, and then I realize that I'm spending money and taking up space for comics that I don't love as much as I need to in order to really be doing that. So I sold most of them off, but there's a few that I've picked up since then because, of course, I can't just stop getting them if you see them really cheap. I'm pretty sure I have more issues of GI Combat in here. Here's Vietnam Journal number 1. Let me get the lighting right here. Vietnam Journal number 1. I've heard amazing things about this book. I haven't read it only because I'm waiting to get the full run, and I don't have that yet. It's supposed to be basically the best Vietnam War comic out there. Issue 2, 3, let's see, issue 4. It seems like I have the complete run, but I don't. Trust me. Here's number 5, 6. These were done by Don Lomax. I believe he did both the writing and the artwork, and he was a Vietnam vet. Here's issue 8. So there's missing number 7. Here's issue 8. Famous protest cover. Number 13. Not actually sure how many issues that ran, but obviously I'm missing some of them, and I don't want to fill the rest of it in and read that because that's a series. I do have not a complete run of Nom because the last issues are really hard to get, but I think I have the first 50 plus issues of the Nom, and it's really good. I haven't read all of them yet, but I think I'm up to issue 35 or so, and it's quite good. I know that the writer, again, who was a Vietnam vet, who created that series, he ended up leaving the book, and then I know the book went a little bit downhill after that. But so far, I'm really liking that. Brave and the Bold, 96, with Sergeant Rock. I actually have quite a number of Brave and the Bold issues, like a lot, because I collect a lot of the guest stars, and it's just sort of accrued quite a few of them. Here's number 108. Interesting thing about this is that the distribution date for this issue was the day before I was born. I love date stamps. I have a spreadsheet with all of the date stamps in my collection, so whenever anyone's looking for a certain date stamp, I can immediately check. And basically what I've discovered in my research and from doing this for a long time is that comics were not distributed the day I was born. They were distributed, they weren't all on the same day back then. Different distributors had different days. So there were comics distributed the day before I was born and the day after I was born, but not the day of my birth. This was the day before I was born. I do have other issues from both of those dates with the date stamp. So I have the day before I was born on a date stamp, the day after, and I actually found those in the wild. I have at time to time looked on eBay trying to find a date stamp with my birth date. No luck yet. But in the wild, I found both of those, so that's cool. I'm still hoping to find that unicorn, which is a date stamp on one of those books like this, but from a store that got them late or just stamped them late. Because I have seen that. There's a book that came out the same day as this where I've seen it with the date stamp from later. So the same book I've seen with multiple different date stamps on it from about a week apart. So I know it happens, but it's a super unicorn, and I'm not really expecting to ever find it. And here's another, this is a classic one. This is another Sergeant Rock appearance. He actually appeared in this quite a bit. And this is the one where Jim Aparo is in the story, and the story involves the creative team actually getting mixed up in the adventure. Here's a cool book that I don't have enough issues of. It's a Sergeant Rock series that Joe Kubert did in 2005 and 2006. His art just got better and better. And not only that, but the printing quality got better and better. And so the stuff he did later on is just great. Yeah. There's a Charlton war book that I kept. I picked up at like a dollar bin. It's called The Nazis Meet Billy the Kid. So I saw this in a dollar bin. I was like, yeah, I'm keeping that one. Our Army at War 151, key book. Key book. You see this thing where it says, "Who is the blazing enemy we dared not show in this cover?" Who? Enemy is the key word. This is the first appearance of Enemy Ace. I got this on eBay a long time ago, and I was very frustrated because when I opened it up, it turns out there's a tear in the center of the book that runs through like 8 or 10 pages. Not disclosed. It wasn't worth really getting into it with the seller. I didn't pay very much for it, but it was really frustrating. Star Spangled War Stories 108. I think this is another quarter bin or 50-cent bin. It's missing the back cover. This is from the war that time forgot. It's one of 2 different issues with Dinosaur D-Day, which I love. The concepts in this are so wacky. I love it. It's a bunch of landing crafts, but inside, instead of soldiers, they're filled with dinosaurs. Read that series in small bursts. If you read more than 2 or 3 issues in a row, they really become very samey and tedious. But one at a time, yeah. I mean, the high concept is so great. Here is Sergeant Stryker's Death Squad #1. This is Atlas. Version war book, their version of Sergeant Fury. I actually just got issue 3 of this recently, so I need to put those together. Army at War 168. This is a book that causes me intense frustration and irritation. So this is considered by some to be the first appearance of Unknown Soldier. Spoiler alert, I'm not one of those people. And that look really serious with the hat on when I say that. So here's the story with this. So this came out, I don't remember, 66, I think this is 1966. It's got the go-go checks. And in this story, Sergeant Rock encounters a mysterious figure who he never sees the person's face or anything, it's just an unknown soldier. It's a soldier that is unknown, and this mysterious figure, if it's even the same person, Rock gets saved by a faceless unknown soldier like 3 different times. And it's basically a tribute to the idea of the unknown soldier. So 4 years later, in 1970, DC introduced the character Unknown Soldier, and he's got a whole story, and he's cool and whatever. That was in Star Spangled War Stories 151. Well, in Star Spangled War Stories 157, I don't know if they're having a deadline issue or something, what they did was they reprinted this story with a framing story where Sergeant Rock was saying, oh, that was the unknown soldier, the character, not just an unknown soldier. Because of that, a lot of people treat this as though it was the first appearance of the unknown soldier, but it clearly isn't. It clearly was not at 1966 intended to be a character. It was a tribute to the concept of the unknown soldier. The character Unknown Soldier debuted in 1970. This is a retcon. It's a cool book, and it's a perfectly seamless retcon because we never see the character's face or anything. And with the Unknown Soldier, the character, we never really see his face until several years later because he's always wrapped in bandages and he's wearing disguises. So it works perfectly. I have no problem with the retcon. It's a really, really smooth, smartly done retcon, but it's a retcon. Like, this is not his first appearance. I am a huge fan of the Unknown Soldier. So when I sold off my Sergeant Rock collection, I did keep this issue, but it just drives me nuts when I see this listed as his first appearance. It's not. It's not. Okay, here we are. Oh, here's issue 3 right here. I guess I already did this. Sergeant Stryker's Death Squad, number 3. I think I'm missing issue 2. And a book I've talked about at some length before. It's All American Men of War number 89. I talked about this in my Roy Lichtenstein video because this bottom panel is one of the things that Lichtenstein swiped for one of his pieces of art, quote-unquote art. I think it's the only one I know of where his swipe is actually on the cover. But there's inside, besides that, there's 5 other panels that he based paintings on, including Wham, which is arguably his most famous, most important and valuable work. It's all from this. I actually have 4 copies of this. This is the nicest, which is why it's in my personal collection. The other 3 I'm eventually going to get rid of. And here's issue 90 of All American Men of War. Also has 2 Roy Lichtenstein swipes in it. So it's not quite as important or valuable as issue 89, but these do have some collecting value as a result of the Lichtenstein swipes. They should also have collecting value because they're really cool. And they've got like all these cool stories with Johnny Cloud, but that's why I have some of these other issues. Here's 93, All American Men of War. I really love the big price stamp, the squares, the big 10-cent squares, and then when that turned into 12 cents, it still had that. That's great. Here's 101. A lot of these covers feature Johnny Cloud firing a handgun at an attacking enemy. Not that effective, I don't think. But who knows? Also, there's a time travel story in here. You may have picked up on that. He's from World War II, but he's fighting a MiG, a jet, from the Korean War. It's a time travel story. 105. Here he is riding a horse, shooting a handgun at a plane. That is even less effective, I would think. 106. I'm a big fan of this series. 107. They also like to have big faces. A big face with action in the background. Towards the end of the series, they introduced a new character, issue 112. It's Lieutenant Steve Savage, Balloon Buster. So he's a World War I pilot. In the James Robinson's Starman series that came out in the 90s into the early 2000s. There's a whole mythology around the city of Opal and the different residents of it, and the Savage family is part of that. Brian Savage, aka Scalp Hunter, who we've talked about before because I have a bunch of issues of Weird Western, is the main one that's featured in Starman, but James Robinson basically tied that family's lineage to Steve Savage being a descendant of Brian Savage, and then there was another character, Matt Savage, I think, the trail boss, who is another Western character from DC, and in James Robinson's timeline is Scalp Hunter's father. So anyway, a little bit of trivia for you there. 115, we have Johnny Cloud back on the cover, featured. 116, Joe Kubert. It's a Balloon Buster cover, but again, using the handgun, you got to go with the handgun. Why not? And 117, Johnny Cloud. This is right when the series was ending. So let's see what we got here. Oh, we got Showcase 57. All-time classic cover. So great. Just absolutely amazing. Joe Kubert black cover. It's one of two like all-time classic covers that he did, black covers with Enemy Ace. I don't think I have the other one. Here's another Star Spangled War Stories with the War That Time Forgot. This is 112. This is the time a dinosaur is pulling a submarine out of the ice. War That Time Forgot, 122. Dinosaurs versus Tanks. I think we see who the winner of that one is. I've got more of these than I thought. I didn't realize I had this many issues of this. 124. It's a big red dinosaur smashing up through a bridge. Looks like a Kubert cover. Yeah, it's definitely a Kubert. Star Spangled War Stories 150. This has a hole punched through the top corner. I got this for $1. This is the last issue of the Enemy Ace feature on the cover. So because the next issue is when Unknown Soldier took over. I actually got a 150 and a 151 with the first Unknown Soldier for $1 each with a hole punch, but I have another copy of the other one. Okay, here we are from 2010. It's a Star Spangled War Stories one-shot featuring Mademoiselle Marie. I desperately would love to get her first appearance, which I think is in issue 84 of Star Spangled War Stories. Her series only lasted like 5 or 6 issues, maybe 6. I don't have any of those. They're very expensive, but I'm always on the lookout for one of those if I can get one cheap. And speaking of getting something cheap, it's The Lonely War of Captain Willie Schultz, number 76. This is a pretty hard to find. I say hard to find. No one collects them, so it's always hard to tell how hard it really is to find, because you can get them if you want them, but I think it's mainly because there's no demand for it. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is this is a Charlton from 1985. At the end of 85 and to the beginning of 86, Charlton tried to make a comeback for a few issues. These are reprints of some books from the late 60s. And the Willie Schultz series is acclaimed as being one of the best, if not the best, American war comics of all time. And I don't have any of the others, but I did sign up on Kickstarter. I backed a project a while ago to collect and remaster the entire story. And then as part of that, the original writer has written an ending because that series got canceled. Like a very abruptly. It's a whole long story. Maybe I'll talk about it in a later video, but anyway, that Kickstarter project to finally finish that storyline was fully funded like 2 years ago, and they still haven't finished it. It's really frustrating, particularly as someone who I have projects that I've done in Kickstarter. Just the idea of not finishing and fulfilling a project that people have backed just drives me. I would never do like it. I don't know. It's just very irritating. And here we have the third. I don't know why this says 3 sections, but our fighting force is 121 with Lieutenant Hunter's Hellcats. Kubert introducing Heller of the Hellcats. It's a woman. I should read this. I haven't read this. It's a woman who's trying to prove that she's should be a soldier. I need to read that one. Oh, more War of the Time Forgot. Jeez, how many of these do I have? I had no idea I had this many of these. I picked these up. This one, as you can see, is $3. And when I see these cheap, I grab them. They're a couple dollars. And obviously, that's happened a lot more often than I remember. This is number 115. That helicopter looks screwed. Totally screwed. Here's issue 102 of All-American Men of War. We have another Johnny Cloud. Again, using a handgun against an enemy plane. If you're ever a fighter pilot, and I haven't been one, so just take this for what it's worth. I have watched Top Gun. Stay in your plane. Your plane is better at shooting at other planes than a pistol. Lieutenant Steve Savage, Balloon Buster. It's issue 114. I think these are not filed with the others because I haven't read these yet, but I have read all of the other ones. And looks like I paid $2 for this. It's really low grade, but it's a Silver Age Kubert cover. Any grade's fine. Star Spangled War Stories 135. I love this logo. It was only on this for a couple issues. 137 is the cover that I think is absolutely amazing, and I don't have that issue. But here we have a cool one where the American and the Japanese soldiers are forced to fight together because once again we have a landing craft that has dinosaurs landing on the island. Who's sending all of these dinosaurs? My gosh. It's Showcase 58, the second Enemy Ace issue. I already showed you 57. Hey, I've got some cool stuff in here. I should look in this box a lot more often. Oh, here's the other one I was telling you about. Star Spangled War Stories 138. I think this is the first issue of the Enemy Ace series. It might have been 137. One of the great covers. I have a low grade copy, but one of the great covers. Joe Kubert just absolutely killing it. Iconic. I want to finish my Enemy Ace run at some point, but I don't want to pay very much money for them, so that's always the tricky part. 149. This one's got a really ugly date stamp. I love date stamps, don't get me wrong, but I like a regular one that has the year and everything. This just has a big fat 12/22. Yeah, I just it's so big and it doesn't have the year. It's just annoying. I would still rather have this than one without a date stamp, don't get me wrong, but as terms of as a date stamp aficionado, they could do better. They could do better. Showcase presents G.I. Joe number 54. This one has a bunch of paper loss on the spine. Looks like I paid $1 for it. I have no recollection of owning this comic. So, DC Special number 26 presents Enemy Ace, another really cool cover. I wonder if this is a new story or a reprint. I should read that. I'm giving you the impression that I don't read my comics. I've actually read a lot of the war books. The horror ones less so. As I mentioned, I'm collecting those more for the covers, but I've read all those Archie horror runs, and I've read a lot of these war books. It's just, there's so many cool ones. Here's the first appearance of Gravedigger. Bold move by DC, starting a new war title in the late 70s. It lasted for, I think, about 22 issues. Here's Gravedigger cover. This is issue 12. Here's a weird one I got for like very cheap. I think it was 10 cents. Maybe it might have been 50 cents actually. It's Captain Storm number 10, and some kid cut all the letters out of the logo. The rest of the book's fine. Of course, Johnny Cloud, Captain Storm, and then Gunner and Sarge from Our Fighting Forces. All three of them had their series ended, and then DC put those characters all together and created the Losers, which is a team of people whose characters, the loser part is that they all got canceled. And I love the Losers. I've got a complete run of Losers. Maybe I'll show that in one of my complete run madness videos, because the covers on that are amazing. It's not just Kubert. There's some awesome covers by Heath, and there's some great covers by John Severin, and then of course Jack Kirby did a bunch of covers. It's great. I might have misspoken about the Heath, but yeah, it's got Severin, it's got Kubert, it's got Kirby, and some great stories. One of my all-time favorite comics is an issue of that run. So I should do that. I should show you my complete run of Losers. Here's another issue of Captain Storm. It's number 17. Low-grade copy, but this one at least has the logo. Here's a cool book. It's Real Heroes, number 8. This came out during the war, and it's got stories about the war being told during the war, particularly the story of Admiral Nimitz. I don't know what the date is on this, but it's probably 44 is my guess. I should look that up. I'm actually going to send this to my father-in-law next time we send him a care package, because he worked in the Pentagon as a Navy official for like 30 years. He's worked at like the Naval Museum and stuff, and so I think he would really dig this. I can tell you this because he doesn't watch these YouTube videos. Semper Fi, speaking of the great John Severin, he did a lot of these covers for this. This is I think probably spurred by the success of the Nom. That's just a guess. I haven't looked at the timeline. It's right around the same time as the Nom. Marvel put out the second series, Semper Fi, which is all stories about the Marine Corps. And this one actually looks like, it's weird. It almost looks like a Michael Golden cover, but with like Severin inks. I'm probably wrong about that. I think I have a complete run of this. Number 3. I actually bought a couple of these as they were coming out, and over the years I lost them, but then later on I put a run together, which wasn't that difficult. Issue 4. Issue 5. It's a very specific concept for a comic. It's only Marines, but the Marines, so it's only U.S. wars, and it's only the Marines' involvement, but they have been involved in everything since the Revolution. So number 6, great work. John Severin's one of the all-time greats. Number 7. Number 8, a little basic training. And number 9, I think this is the last issue. I think that's the complete run. Oh, look. 2, not 1, but 2 copies of Willie Schultz 77. This only lasted either 2 or 3 issues. This one I got because I needed a copy, right? This one I got, even though it's water damaged and stained and terrible, I got it because it has one of the late date stamps you're going to see on it, which is September 30, 1986. I do have one date stamp from 87, and I've seen them. I just saw one from '89 that someone was selling on eBay, and I thought about buying it. It might have been on the CGC forums. I thought about buying it just because of the date stamp. It was an issue of Wolverine, of all things. It was like Wolverine number 9. But I was like, I love the date stamp. I really dislike Wolverine. So is it worth having a Wolverine issue in my collection if just for the date stamp? The answer was no. Here's another late era Charlton. It's Iron Corporal number 23. I don't know what the numbering of these were carried over from books from like the Silver Age or the Bronze Age, and they just picked up the numbering in the 80s. And here's another Iron Corporal, dated December 1985. It's issue 24. It's the next issue. Iron Corporal. Oh, and here's the rest of those GI combats. Finally, the last thing. We get, bring it all back home. 280. The Haunted Tank had lost the cover slot. They're actually shown here, but they sort of were back and forth with this group called the Mercenaries for a while. This is 281. .282. Here's the Mercenaries. I don't know. The guy's got a beret. He's got a white eye patch. It's kind of cool, right? There's 3 guys in the Mercenaries. It's kind of like the Expendables, but with better actors. 283. These late issues of GI Combat aren't quite as easy to get as the early ones. That's not why I have them. I have them because I think I've mentioned this in an earlier video, but a couple years ago I was at a store and they had 2 long boxes of Copper and Bronze Age books, and they were $20 each for the long boxes. They weren't quite full, but they were pretty full, so it was like over 200 comics in each. Well, I did the math and I ended up paying 8 cents each. And what I did was I took out all the cool stuff that I wanted, which included some stuff I really wanted. And then I sold off almost all the rest on Craigslist and made a fair amount of money. And then I kept all the random stuff. And one of the random things I kept was this batch of GI Combats. 287. This is the next to last issue. 288 was the last issue. And then randomly in the back of this box, it is War is Hell, number 3. Speaking of John Severin, these are reprinting various war comics from Marvel, including like Combat Casey and stuff from the 50s. They started doing Sergeant Fury at one point, and then with issue 9 it became new stories, introduced John Kowalski, who is an agent of death. Those I have a complete run of somewhere because I love that series. So it's War is Hell, like number 9 through 14. Chris Claremont. Really, really cool stuff. These are reprints though. The earlier issues of War is Hell. This is the only of one of the first 8 that I have. So that's it. War is Hell. Also, hell are there's like literal hell on some of these horror comics. So it's just a hell of a bunch of good comic books here. So that's it for this time. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be doing more of these. I've tried to keep this shorter and I totally failed, so I'm sorry. But next time, I promise I'll cut these in half and I'll try and do half a box at a time instead of a full box. So thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.